So this is the session on College Ready by Design, Policies and Practices aimed at increasing the transition from high school to higher education. We are very honored to have Lopez, Interim Superintendent in High School District 214 and Chair of the Illinois Community College Board, and Marcus Brown, Deputy Director for Academic Affairs and Student Success at the Illinois College Community Board. And they will lead us in today's discussion. We're in very good hands. Welcome, and thank you both.
Thank you so much, Edith. I appreciate it. All right, good morning, everyone. Just want to give a little bit of setup of the session and the purpose of it. This work actually started really a decade ago, as Amy referenced, and it really began even in partnership with many of the same players that are part of Ed Systems now. And it was this simple concept, this College Ready by Design concept, that we believed that the state of Illinois could graduate 80% of its students college ready by design. And a lot of the infrastructure of legislation was to support that effort. And you're going to see representations of that throughout our slide deck, but it's a concept that we can do this statewide. And think of the implications for that as a state being able to deliver a talent pipeline of students that are college ready, right? And that means more than just for 4 years. Part of being college ready is also knowing when you step foot on a college campus why you're there. And it might not be a 4-year university campus. It might be a 2-year community college campus. It might be a technical credential that you're earning, whether it's a welding certificate. But it's this broad concept of being post-secondary ready. And maybe we should reframe it from that lens. But this morning, you're going to see a nice overview of what that work, the foundational policy work that's happened in the state and how it's being implemented and how we can scale this across the entire state. So I'm going to transition to Marcus here, who's going to be more specific. Go ahead.
Thanks, Laz. And you might be in trouble because we are both sort of walkers, so we may end up standing next to you at some point during this presentation. But really thinking through, as Laz said, about the policies and practices that have really centered transition from high school to higher education and increasing the likelihood of persistence and completion. So we're going to really be sort of diving into some of the immediate practices around transitional instruction, around developmental education remediation and what that looks like, dual credit policies, as we think about, access points and what that looks like for students to think through what does that career pathway look like, what's optimal sort of in that pathway in terms of courses, career pathwaying, and initiatives that both happen in the K-12 and leverage themselves very effectively into transitioning into higher education. So we'll have lots of data around community college persistence and completion, what that looks like, the impact of dual credit, for example, on ultimately retention and completion in college, and why experience and exposure matters as much as just sort of academic wherewithal.
And I didn't mean to skip our introductions. I think Edith introduced us already. I've chaired the Illinois Community College Board since 2015, appointed by both governors. So been working on ed policy statewide for a number of years. I'm also been in High School District 214, who's implemented and has served sort of as a proof of concept for a lot of the policies that you'll hear about. And I'm also on the workforce side, where I chair the Illinois Youth Apprenticeship Workforce Group and part of the IWIB for the state. And I didn't know if you wanted.
Oh, sure. And I'm Marcus Brown. I work for a number of years on a campus and working with everything from student services to transfer work. And I was there in the early days of II. And when I say early days, I was at the beginning of II. But lots of that came to ICCB now about 4.5 years ago. And have been working in academic policy and student services and wraparound since then.
All right. So this is really what we're going to talk about. And these are extraordinarily important sort of facets of the work that's happening statewide that lends the foundation for you to be able to do this, for us to scale it. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Illinois Community College Board and its board goals and the way that directs the work. The Illinois Articulation Initiative, which we codified in legislation only recently, only in the last few years. It used to just be a handshake. I will tell you that this alone is worth the price of admission. Most states, when I travel the country, do not have an IAI. This is what helps guarantee the value of dual credit for students, and as well as community college credit earned there at our four-year institutions. College and career endorsements, and if you're in higher ed, how many higher ed folks do we have in the room? If you're in higher ed, what does that mean for you? And try to understand, why does that matter and how does that influence students stepping foot on your campus? The PACE framework, again, from a higher ed perspective, understanding that this is the work that's happening and the scalable model across our high schools. And this concept of college ready by design, ensuring that our students are graduating from high school ready for college level work and what that looks like. So beginning with this Illinois landscape, state federal agency alignment, you'd be surprised to know that actually all of these different entities, the Community College Board, the State Board of Education, the Illinois P20 Council, the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, all of us actually work together. And there have been some outcomes, because I know we hear a lot about silos. I want you to know this really did change over the last, I would say, 5 to 8 years, where we are all at the same table. We came together to do a significant amount of work that supports a lot of the policy frameworks that you're about to learn about. So all of these, even the DCEO, who you may not believe is connected to education, it actually significantly is from the workforce side, right? And they have a vested interest, and they support a lot of programs in our community colleges and help, including adult education in our communities. And so there's several pieces of legislation that influence the work that's happened in the state in both K-12 and in higher ed. One is the Every Student Succeeds Act. For our higher ed folks, what that means is that's ties the money that the federal government provides to states, that's provided to high school districts to do a lot of this, to do a lot of our work, particularly with our at-risk youth or our students of poverty. It's millions and millions of dollars that every high school, every school district receives throughout our state. They don't all receive millions, but as far as spread out, really sort of controls the strings that are attached to those funds and resources. Perkins 5, that supports career and technical education. And those are those dollars that flow through both in our higher ed as well as in our high schools. That supports a lot of this work on our campuses, from equipment to staff to training and professional development. And then the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. I don't know, Marcus, why don't you talk about that one?
Oh, sure. So that's, as you know, sort of the opportunity to help support students through retraining, through educational impact in the workforce, really trying to identify high need, particularly high need programs where students can go and earn living wages in that particular program as well. And Laz, I want to go back to one thing, because I think one of the things that historically happens as a chasm between higher ed and K-12 systems, when we think about the like the ESSA, a lot of times the outcomes, if you will, for K-12 systems don't always align with what we think are the entry in pathways for higher ed. And so oftentimes you see a lot of chasm between there, because, you know, we say, one says, this is what students need to graduate and be prepared, right, to leave high school. And on the other side, higher ed often will say, this is what we expect students to be able to bring us when they come to higher ed. And those don't always align or feel like they align in any case. And so that's part of the strategies we're going to be actually highlighting, how those things become aligned.
Right. And that really is, to some extent, what influenced my comment in the larger group about ESSA requiring the state to identify some kind of accountability system and testing system. The state responded by adopting the College Board SAT assessment for high schools. It's accountability framework. The challenge with that is that it overly emphasizes that tests given on a single day across our state over all of the other goals we have, that we actually have incorporated a lot of this career connected learning. But the benchmarks they set, even though the SAT does serve a purpose for college admissions, the benchmarks they set were so high, arbitrarily high, that it really misrepresents students. And it has our students graduating looking like they're not really ready or that they're not really reading. And it really maligns many of our communities, misrepresenting the percentage of students that actually are meeting the benchmarks. So many of our universities will use 480 for a cut score to get into a college composition. But the benchmark the state has set is 540 in reading. So students can be actually being successful in your college level classes, but not meet the state benchmark for reading. Yeah, it is funny, isn't it? You would think, yeah. All right. So the first thing we did when I became chair of the Illinois Community College Board was streamline our goals and what our focus was. And this really has served the agency really well in focusing the work that we do and really across our state. And those are these three specific goals. We've massaged them and changed them somewhat over the years, but these goals were a seamless transition. So what does that mean? That means that we assess the work that's happening in the agency, and all of the work fits within one of these specific goals. Seamless transition is ensuring that students that are transferring, for example, between adult ed programs and our 4-credit programs are able to transition seamlessly. Students that are graduating high school at 18 and transitioning to our community college campus, that they can do that in a way that's seamless. There was a community I visited a number of years ago in Florida where a student was able to grow up, go through K-12, sit on a community college campus, access their university courses at that community college campus, and actually complete a doctorate without leaving a 3-mile radius of their community. That's seamless. Now, if you can get all those partners to actually talk to each other so that a student isn't having to jump through multiple hoops to get from one to the other, that's seamless, right? And being able to do that's at scale really is a goal for the agency, trying to eliminate barriers and ensuring it's easy to register and apply for courses, that we don't add too many hoops for students to get to, particularly for our students who are first-time college goers. We really need to help support them so that they can make those transitions between high school and higher ed, or adult ed and higher ed opportunities. Economic development. All of the education is economic development. It is. Schools, whether you're a community college or a high school, are an economic engine in their community. I wrote an article titled for the Chamber of Commerce. Schools are economic engines for their community. It is all about economic development and helping students connect with their futures and creating talent pipelines for employers. Employers want to move to states and communities where there is a talent pipeline, right? And equitable outcomes. So the concept that Dr. Lloyd said that demographics should not define your destiny, right? That we ensure that we can scale this across the country and measure our outcomes for students to ensure that we're providing opportunities from rural Illinois to urban and suburban Illinois. These are our three goals that drive all of the work of the agency. I don't know if you want to speak to that, Marcus.
Well, I was just going to say
they were already in place when you started, I think, right?
The other thing I was going to say, though, is that I think you alluded to that, and that's the idea that particularly at community colleges, when we talk about economic development and the necessity for seamless transition, most students who attend community colleges stay and live and work near their communities. And so the idea that this needs to be sort of both timely and conscious of who's accessing that particular workforce is important. But I think the other thing that's wrapped in all of that is that we have to be mindful about when and how students are accessing this and who's accessing it and whether or not we're serving that particular community well. So as our speaker said earlier, not just that we know that gaps persist, right? But that we have to make action toward those. And so I think that's been our other goal, is that we're not just mindful that there's data, but we know that we have the ability to move and to react to and to respond to those gaps in meaningful ways.
And I would say the way this plays itself out on the board would be, for example, if I am in one community and it takes me 70 hours to complete a welding certificate, Marcus has heard me, but if I'm in another community, I can do it in 62. Is that equitable and fair? We know we have employers in different communities that have different demands, but we're a statewide system. Is that justified? Is that fair? Is that right for a student? Because every time you add another credit hour, you decrease the likelihood of completion. Right?
Yeah, I was just laughing. So if any of you have heard pushback from me or from Tricia, I'm going to need you to talk a little bit more about that. That's why.
Yeah.
One of the other things, and we talked a little bit about that, but one of the things that I think has become really critical in terms of us being able to accelerate this work is the Illinois Articulation Initiatives. So the idea is that the II can serve a multitude of folks whether you know where you want to go, whether you know what major you want, but you're not really sure, whether you have no idea either what you want to study or where you want to go, or you know both. I know my major and I know where I want to go. So the idea is that it serves all of those folks in sort of this rotating thing. So whether that's transfer, as we think about 2-year to 4-year, whether you started at a 4-year, you go back to a 2-year, whether you swirl, as we like to say, you go from 1 2-year to the next 2-year to the next 2-year, and then you end up at a 4-year, whatever that is. One of the things that II has become critical in doing is ensuring the transfer of the gen ed. So, for example, we have 100 universities participating. This is a faculty-driven process, so it's not sort of what I like to call random administrators and bureaucrats doing this, but really all those panels are populated by faculty members who say, this is the content, this is the expectation, this is the outcome we expect. And as folks submit those courses to that, they understand what that means. They understand the approval process to get one course to the next. So that's how English 101 means what everybody thinks it means across the state. That's how an Intro to Psych course means what we think it means. One of the things, though, and Laz indicated this earlier, is that this is really a system that many other states have tried to model, have tried to sort of figure out how we do this, because if you've ever sort of seen a panel happen and getting anywhere from 15 to 25 faculty members in a room and agreeing about anything, it is a lot of work. And then managing that and saying, we keep coming back to the table, we keep doing course review, we keep doing these things so we make sure the course stays up to date, we make sure the outcomes are really relevant to what they're doing. This is a really big process across the state. There are other states who have tried to model this, but really they drive from, I'll pick on California because it's easy to distinguish. So there's the UC system, right? And then there's the university. So there's University of California, and then there's California State, right? Those are separate systems. And so they do their work separately. And so trying to coordinate the UC system and the CSU system, right? And so what happens if a student wanted to go to UC, but they changed their mind, now they're in the Cal State system? Right? And so this is one of the things that unifies the state voice around the gen ed. And as we begin introduction of the majors, there are 17 majors in the panel. So this really ensures that there is system-wide agreement about what that means, so that as we get to later, as a student thinks about a dual credit course, what's the right dual credit course? Will this transfer? Will it mean what I think it means later on? Becomes an answer that we can affirm across the board. Yes, if you take English, it's always going to be English. Yes, if you take this course, it's always going to be that course, wherever you transfer in the state. And that's the sort of the magic, but around the II. You complete the gen ed core, for example, that transfers and wipes the gen ed wherever you go. So whatever the home gen ed is, it won't matter. If you've completed the II gen ed core, you've satisfied the gen ed at that university.
If you want something to be proud of in Illinois, something that we've done right, this is what we've done right. This is the foundation of all dual credit, of our GECC, of our transfers, and we have more transfer. I think we lead the nation in the number of.
We lead the nation, and we're one of the leaders, and have been for a number of years the leader in transfer students who transfer and complete baccalaureate degrees. Illinois ranks among the best in the nation in terms of that completion of that, and no small part.
And I think it's important for you to know, I was in some group that was trying to address potential problems and issues, and this was one of the things they brought up, where can students transfer their credits, and this is what allows that to happen. Do we speak to transferology here or later?
Oh, yes. So paired with this is that there, so II is its own system, but paired with this is the idea around transferology. And so that's a second transfer work in the state, but that allows students to go through and to make an account in transferology and understand in more detail how their coursework will transfer to multiple universities. So you can select.
If you're a high school student, you're a counselor, you can go in there, plug in the course, and it'll tell you exactly what transfers from where to where. You have a question over here? Go ahead.
You are talking about
the product.
Transferology.com, yeah.
Yes. And so that's one of the other sort of unique things. And that again is a management work. I've done that, submitting course banks, make sure your course banks are up to date, making sure if you're a college school and whether or not it reads that when students put that in and corrects the right, spelling of the course and all those kinds. There's all that kind of stuff that happens, right? Because students put in, I took English 101. Is it E and G? Is it E and GL? Is it EG? all those kinds of things. And so it works through all that process to make sure that students can clean that up and understand how their courses are going to transfer on a micro level to a particular college or university.
All right. So high school endorsements. Go ahead. Question. Yeah.
Yes. itransfer.org. Sorry, I should have put that link on there.
So what's itransfer.org have? Is that the...
So that tells you, there's a number of things on itransfer.org. It tells you about what II does. It gives students a practice worksheet, for example. So if you just want to populate a gen ed, I'm at this school, what happens if I take these courses? It satisfies the gen ed. It gives you the actual course listing by course identifier of all the gen ed and all the major coursework. If you're a transfer coordinator, it tells you, sort of gives you some foundational information, gives you all the policy, law, and background of II on that.
And the idea of II is really all of our core general ed courses, all right? All our core general ed courses. Okay, so high school endorsements, and there's people in this room who help write the legislation and who is more of an expert on the policy side of this. However, but particularly for our higher ed partners, what you should know is that high school endorsements have been adopted sort of as a K-12 framework. And it represents the 16 career clusters in the National Career Cluster Framework. And so, for example, in my local school district, we've reframed our entire academic handbook around career pathways, where, yes, you have all the core high school graduation requirements of 4 years of English and math, science, social studies, but the student starts their exploration really from the lens of their electives and how they want to engage with schools, right? How they want to personalize their high school experience through those 4 years. And Amy said that, yes, a 14-year-old doesn't know what they want to do with their life. We don't expect them. It's really utilizing high school as a relevant part of your discovery process. And I know times have changed, from when we were in college, that you could step foot on a college campus, be undecided and figure it out while they're there. And maybe that works for some. But for most, college has become so expensive and out of reach that the process of going through this discovery process beginning at 14 and 15 and 16, not that we think they're going to decide immediately, but that students have the flexibility to move along pathways and explore elective courses to help them understand by the time they're 18 and they cross the stage, what is it that I'm really interested in? And they've had opportunities to network, have work-based learning experiences, right? Have series of coursework, including early college credit, that they are more likely to be more informed to make better decisions about their future. All right. So these are the 7 high school endorsements. In order for a student to earn an endorsement, if you have a student that comes to your institution, your community college or your university with one of these endorsements, this is what this means. This means that the student has gone through a full path and sequence of courses, typical of a career in tech ed, right? Where they've had an orientation course, some kind of advanced courses and capstone experiences, where they've experienced at least 2 career exploration activities, right? So those are things such as being able to job shadow, do career speakers, those things, but also an intensive experience where you have 60 cumulative hours of paid or credit supervised career development. That is your traditional internship, right? Or we have about 100 students that are going to be engaged in apprenticeships, like Department of Labor registered apprenticeships where they're getting paid. So it is an actual work-based learning experience, not just the job shadowing, but an actual 60 hours of 4 credit experience in the job. So that might mean if I'm in IT, for example, I have students that are actually exceeding this, doing 1,000, 1,200 hours while they're a high school senior working in IT as a generalist, where they have sort of a split schedule. We also have students that are doing these at 30-hour increments in micro internships where they're spending 30 hours as an IT generalist, getting that experience, or maybe it's as an engineer, and then maybe doing a second experience in a slightly different experience, but in that same pathway. But students, when they get to this experience towards the end of their high school career, they may have already earned some of those industry sought credentials. They may already have some early college credit under their belt. So they're stepping foot into these work experiences with something to offer employers. And they've also had at least 2 team-based challenges with adult mentoring. So this might mean in healthcare where they've had to do an emergency response scenario in a supervised experiences with medical professionals. It means all of those things, right? And they're also academic ready, meaning they're ready for non-remedial coursework in reading and math. So think about what this means. If I have an endorsement, that means I've gone through 4 years of high school. I've had all of these courses. I've had an internship experience. I've probably done some career exploration activities, and I'm ready for college courses. Don't you want that student on your college campus? They are going to be ready. They are going to be most likely to persist and complete. Yes, go ahead.
Question. So I'm listening. We do a lot of this work with our students, and one of our challenges is how do we get this applied to their, their transcript, right? Like we're doing this, we're an employer-led intermediary, so we're doing this on our campus, if you will. How do we make sure that
it's reflected?
Their home district is clear on all these things that they've done with us.
And this is the list of examples here on the left. I don't know, probably John or Emily might be able to answer that even better. Like because I know you've done some statewide work, how are people sort of recording this on a transcript? Do you know? Maybe you can give John a mic.
How do you work with your school district partners, to like clearly define what the students did in ways that meet the experiences that Laz just outlined? So you can truly say, hey, we did a team-based challenge, Ed Systems on our website, there's templates, so you can document this stuff, right? And say like, our students are doing these things. We want to make sure that you're bringing that back in for counting it towards a pathway endorsement. I mean, we talk about this like under new state law, all districts in the state, unless you go through the process to opt out, are putting in place pathway endorsement. So they're looking for partners. So if you're a nonprofit, you can come to districts and say, hey, we can help you deliver on this. I think they'll have the audience. And what we can do through our organizations and those templates is help you document what you're doing. So it's not just a bunch of stuff. It's just saying, no, like we're meeting the definition of a team-based challenge. And we have a career pathways dictionary that defines it, and that we're doing the 30 hours for this experience as well. So great question. Let us know when we can help.
Yes, back there, right next to you, right there. Good.
I have a different question. So when you're talking about CCPEs, college and career pathways endorsements, and you're talking about IAA, what we're finding is they don't overlap. So for instance, I can get a CCPE in, healthcare or something like that, like welding, but the course that we're using in dual credit is not IAI. So it's transferable to our local community college that we have a partnership with, but not with the state of Illinois. And so when we're talking about CCPE in different business and different other areas, we're struggling to find the course that is IAI approved, that we have instructors for, and meets all of our needs.
Now, I don't think you're referring to this, I don't know if I mentioned it, but the other requirement is 6 hours of early college credit, 2 years of coursework equivalent. I remember, career courses are not intended to be part of IAI. IAI is really for your gen ed core requirements, right? And so, okay.
Yep. So there's
no, that's okay. And we've got the people in here who can answer it if I can't.
I think there's a couple things. One is that lots of community colleges in particular have been working through approved programs of study through the Perkins. So that would be your first sort of level of, this is what's going to level at least our students who are likely to go to the community college in the area that they're in. But I think that begs the bigger question is, what does that mean once you don't go there? And so I think we push back to making sure there's a couple things. One is that the community college has a responsibility to sort of say, what is this going to do for the student when they leave here? And have that be articulated to the student and in the pathway. So if you're a business major, here's what that business pathway looks like beyond high school. And here's what the impact of those courses are when you take them here. So there's an articulation both from the K-12 system to the community college and then the greater league to the community college. And I think the second part of that is that we understand that historically AAS degrees have been terminal degrees, and I think we're in a frankly a different environment now where there's still a struggle around making that the AAS be more meaningful in the transfer process. But again, their initial design was not to transfer, and so there's still, I think, a statewide.
Hopefully, we can change that.
Struggle about how that works.
Can I give you a practitioner's response? Like for me in our business pathway, we have college managerial accounting and college financial accounting. Those aren't IAI courses; they're not intended to be, but those are business courses that would meet the criteria, wouldn't it, John? College managerial and financial accounting, wouldn't that meet those 6 years of college credit?
Yeah, so that for the 6 hours, that's very broadly applied. Includes, advanced placement, articulated credit, dual credit. From the IAI standpoint, if you are looking at the model programs of study on the ICCB website, for the Ed Systems website, where there are IAI courses in that career focus sequence, they are identified. And you're at a great session, but another session happening right now is called the Illinois Articulation Agreement and Pathways, how major courses can be targeted for dual credit. That is actually an active policy area in the state. Talk to a colleague that's in that breakout, but we are trying to get more of those IA classes come.
Great.
That's right. Don't get up and leave. But I will mention.
Joshua has a question.
Yep. The other part of that is that II, as part of its recommendations for majors, do also address some of those courses. So they may be major specific courses, like in accounting, for example, in the business area. There are 2 accounting courses that are part of that requirement, but they also may be part of the greater recommendation around coursework preparation.
Yeah, and just kind of to add to your point, the alignment of CCPE to IAI, education is an example that I frequently use there, right? So if we're doing diversity of school and society, if you will, at a community college, and we're doing it as dual credit as part of our 6 credit hours in our CCPE, is there a way to get that to where it's IAI transferable and recognized across all institutions in the state of Illinois? And I would say, yes, there surely to goodness has to be some way to get that done for the sake of the value of what's happening in the community colleges. It elevates that. And also teacher shortage as we continue to have that conversation.
I can tell you that's the first time I've heard that as a need. I mean, I would have heard it. So if that is a need, then I think I need to hear about that. But from my lens, I thought our IEI, basically math, science, and, all of your core classes, no one's talked to me about the need to expand that into sort of core area. I'd have to learn and understand more before I advocated for that. I want to make reference to the Career Pathway Dictionary. If you haven't seen it, again, I will tell you, this is a significant accomplishment in our state. All of those agencies came together to write this. Department of Commerce, Economic Opportunity. I remember the meeting to come to an agreement on what means what. And you would be surprised. It seems like it should be simple. This was not simple, but we do have it defined. My guess is we've got to update it at some point, right, John? Awesome, great. And we're going to update it? Good. But it was we were all saying same words, but meaning different things before. All right. And so I just want you to understand sort of the interrelatedness of all of this. So for our higher ed folks in high schools, part of our accountability framework, we did get career ready indicators in our state sort of State Board of Education accountability metrics for our high schools. So it has all of these things in there: community service, industry credentials, summer employment, dual credit courses, completion of program of studies. And all of these, actually, the way these came to be, because this was all, a lot of the research happened out of my office, was all of these are connected in some way to an increase in the likelihood of persistence and completion. All of this work is about persistence and completion post-secondary. So my higher ed folks, this is why this matters to you. It's the purpose and goal to ensure students have the best chance to stay at your institution all the way through to graduation, right? So this is part of the K-12 accountability framework. We just needed to wait more than the arbitrary benchmark for the SAT. And then we've got the Illinois PACE framework, right? Post-secondary and career expectations. And I think most of you in the room are familiar with this. This is also groundbreaking work, but this is still being scaled across the state. Schools sort of modify this sort of for their locality. And you can see it starts by the 8th grade. I've seen school districts move it further into our unit districts have moved it into 6th grade or earlier. And it just indicates the things that students are able to do. some of which were already referenced in this morning's sessions. But it really guides the students through both the discovery process as well as helping set them up for the likelihood of success in that transition, right? For that seamless transition of students. Marcus, I'm going to give you the clicker now.
Oh.
Because you're going to be.
I think that means I'm talking more.
Yes.
So again, we talk about why it's important to align state agencies and goals and policies, what we're trying to impact with these partnerships. And I think, La said it best. We're really trying to ensure that the things that we're doing in the K-12 system both align, but also produce persistence in higher education and completion. So one of the reasons why we know this is important work is we begin to look at what this looks like for actual graduation rates. We know that that has an impact. So when we look at the graduation rate for African-American students who graduate a four-year institution, this is based on 2018 cohort data, Illinois graduation from a four-year institution is 37%, and from a two-year institution is 15.4%. When we look at that comparable to Hispanic or Latinx populations, you see 53% and 27%.
Can I mention, just because I this is the first time I see this data, and I have the 2016 cohort data, and this is an increase, actually. It went up by 4 points for African Americans. It went up for Hispanic students from 49.3 to 53. So we are on an upward trajectory, but it's still not great. We still have a lot of work to do.
Because when you look at the other comparable population, so when we look at it for white students, for example, the graduation rate is 70% and 40% at the two-year institution, making that overall 63% for all graduates and 32%. So this gets back to this idea that if you just looked at graduation rates, you go, oh, we're doing okay, right? We're doing okay. But when you go back and you disaggregate that and you see really where the impact is of policies, of procedures, of access, and support, you really can begin to dig out the difference in that particular number. So again, when we think about what this means for the support, when we kind of looked at graduation, and I was going to put this down, but I still need to click this. When we look at this, one of the things that's important to note is that we're talking right now also about students who are in the K-12 system right now. And as we compare that to students, for example, who are over the age of 25, with bachelor's degrees or higher, we begin to see differences fall out in the Black or African American population. We begin to see differences fall out in the Hispanic population or Latin population, but particularly in the Hispanic or the Latin population, and I'm using Hispanic because that's the word in your article. So what we find is that immigrant performance for baccalaureate degrees is higher than students who are in the US. And so there's a value around that. And what we begin to try to dig out is what are the impact of those policies that would cause that discrepancy. For example, so a completion of 10 years out there from high school being at 12% versus those who have been in the country 5 years or less having 26%.
So let me interject from a state policy lens why this looks the way it do and why it's so disturbing and why we need to change the way we treat our students. Our long-term language learners are in our systems, born in the United States, and 2/3 to 3/4 of them in my system are still in EL when they graduate high school. That's a crime. And it is in part because of utilizing that access test, which is part of the WIDA assessment, again, an assessment, where the benchmark is set, where your average native-born non-second language students would struggle to pass it at that level as well. So for a student to exit EL and access sort of a traditional curriculum, they have to reach this benchmark, right? Or else we have to make sure that they're, and we should, right? We should provide additional services. The problem that's happened, the unintended consequences, is that often in communities in Illinois and across our country, those students become segregated. In order to meet the federal and state requirements of services, they become segregated in order to have a bilingual teacher in the room or an ESL endorsed staff member, right? And so they end up in this little cohort where they don't see anyone else, and they become this sort of group that supports each other, and they don't really want to leave the group, right? It is sad, and I will tell you that across the country, the percentage of students that are meeting the benchmark to exit EL is in the single digits, both in our state and at almost every school district in this country. And so that is a significant problem.
So, and again, when we look at the advancement rate, which is students who continue, students who graduate, or students who transfer, that's how we define it at the Community College Board for advancement.
For your high school folks don't understand the difference between advancement rate and graduation rate, and why so can you explain to us?
Sure. So
what is an advancement rate? Why does it matter?
Yep. So advancement rate is how we calculate who continues to be in the system or complete. So for us, for the Community College Board, advancement rate includes those students who went to the 2-year to the community college and either graduated, are still enrolled, or have transferred to another college.
Because not every student that steps foot on a community college is there for more than a handful of courses, right?
Correct.
Might be stepping foot during the summers.
Yep. So they might be there in the summer. For example, when we talked about II and completion of the gen ed, students can do that in roughly a year, roughly. And so they may do their gen ed and then transfer on to the university. And so that's not a lost cause, if you will, for the community college. That's completion. That's a significant milestone for the student.
It's a fairer representation of what's actually happening.
Yes. So these are students who have otherwise been engaged in the system or completed it, as opposed to stopping out. And so one of the reasons, so I would be remiss if I didn't say, you can go to the Illinois Post-Secondary Profiles.com and dig through lots of this information by community college district, by major, by ethnicity and racial demographics and that kind of way. But one of the reasons why, again, we talk about why this is important, when we dig out through that advancement rate, the advancement rate looks okay at 61%, right, for students. But when we dig through and understand who's progressing and at what rate they're progressing, again, it says to us, more than just knowing there's a gap, what are the things that we can do and can implement in order to make sure that we are addressing this in real ways?
So that's our why, right? That's our why. Actually, you can keep it because we're going to go back and forth.
Okay.
So that is the why behind all that legislation and behind these completion strategies and some of the work that's happened in the state and to scale this. So we're going to talk real quickly about multiple measures and recommendations for placement, co-requisite, and transition courses.
Yep. So, and again, I'm probably still in Lopez's design, but
don't mind. So this is the idea, the concept of college ready by design. Okay. So college ready by design in Illinois means that we've implemented at scale and we've supported and put millions of dollars behind transition courses so that your senior year of high school, if you're not already testing for the benchmark to be ready for college level English and math, you can be in a English or math transition course at your local high school that is not remedial, because it is not remedial in high school. It is the college's sort of 100 level course that they've developed in partnership with their local school district, but it's going to be transcripted on the kids' credit and it's portable statewide, regardless of what public institution they go to in our state, any of those community colleges. And many of our universities who've adopted it. Second, if you've already met a benchmark for college level work, well, then you are in college English composition or college math 101 or college algebra or college calc. I have students in college calc 3 and DiffEQ in the high school because those students, that's where they're ready. Or it's already scaled for most of our state. They're in an advanced placement course in calc or in calc. So if you're in any one of these three, you are going to graduate college ready by design. That's how we get to scale.
And I think, we indicated that part of the way to do this is to think through more than an assessment, a one-time moment in a student's life in order to value better. So the board focused on that and worked with chief academic officers, chief student service officers, and was endorsed by the Council of Presidents in 2018 to implement multiple measures, which means that there are multiple ways in which a student might show readiness for a college gateway course, for a college English or math course. And so these are the ways, and you can tell this has been some time because those of you in the K-12 system go, PARC, what's that? Or maybe you're the ones who know when higher ed goes park. What's that?
And Marcus, we've got about 10 minutes.
Okay.
So we're going to go.
And so those are the kinds of ways in which students can demonstrate readiness across a variety of mechanisms, including even the GED score.
And can I say why this is powerful? Because it's not fair if I live in one community by zip code and I'm forced to only go to that community college, and for that college to have one benchmark to get into college quantitative math 101 and another college to have another one. It is not fair to our students. We have one community college system.
Yep. One of the other things we did to sort of support this idea around paired readiness, that is that co-requisite work, so that if you have to come to college and you may be on the cusp, you may have some work that you need to do, that we implemented what we call co-requisite DevEd grants. And we initiated that as far back as 2016, but worked with community colleges over the long haul to ensure that we would develop ways in which students could also not spend multiple semesters in developmental education. So for example, if I come in and I'm in intermediate algebra, that's where I test in or I demonstrate readiness in. You could pair that then perhaps with the first college gateway course that a student might need in order to have this sort of co-requisite model where students can continue to progress through the gateway course and not spend multiple time or semester in.
This is a smart audience, so they know if I start a remedial and I have about a 1 in 10 chance of persisting to completion. And can I just mention, just back on multiple measures, that is why we need to change the SAT benchmarks in math. It's not fair for every kid to need to score a 530 to get into college math 101 or calc. Those are different courses. It's a different student. It's a different pathway. All right. Go.
Yep.
Okay.
So we provided grants to all colleges also around transitional courses. So as we were beginning to scale, the idea was that the intention was that community colleges had to work with K-12 districts to develop this. We call them local advisory panels. In order to sort of work through the competencies that have been developed to demonstrate that a student might be able to take one of these courses. The courses are approved in a very similar way to II courses. They are panel-driven courses by faculty in both the K-12 district and the community college, and has a couple of university representatives on each of the panels. So they, again, go through that process. What are the competencies? Does this course demonstrate those competencies? Do they have the appropriate outcomes? So that when a student takes that course in their senior year, it's a guaranteed transfer to every community college in the state that you come in without the need for remediation.
Yep.
So we talk a little bit about transitional instruction requirements. So again, they're both designed for seniors. If you are a senior who has not met the high school graduation, or you have for math, because math only requires 3 years. So if you've met that requirement, if you're not projected to be college ready and you're not enrolled in your math course your senior year, you would be an ideal candidate for the math transitional course. And in the same way, if you have completed all 3 years prior of English, but you're not projected to be college ready, you might be a candidate for the transitional English course. Again, lots of these you can find sort of more details at iplacement.org. That's where we sort of house the information around transitional courses and approvals. But again, when we talk about the trajectory of these courses, the transitional courses are relatively new, but laws indicated not every student needs to be STEM prepared, for example. So you can see that we have about 1,400 enrollments in quantitative stats versus 2,000 in STEM and a little bit more than 1,200 in technical math. I had to look at the numbers myself.
Actually, almost 12,000.
12, thank you. Yeah. I'm like, that seems really low.
Yeah.
11,480. That's what it is in STEM courses, because the reality is most students who come through higher ed are not taking a STEM pathway course. They're taking a gen ed math. They're taking a statistics course. They're taking something of that nature. And so again, this kind of aligned to intentionality of students as well.
And I will tell you, I've directed the agency. They are working with College Board to create a data report specific to math as to what is the right benchmark for each of these different levels for the state of Illinois, so that we can adopt that as policy. Oh, I'm told we've got 4 minutes, so we may skip.
So I'll skip this again, showing the impact of this work around remediation and DevEd. So again, looking at where students are impacted, and overall, we've kind of talked about the significant decrease for remediation across the state over the last
1120. So we're at 1120. We end, not 25. Okay. All right, so we may just skip through a couple of these things. We've done really well in developmental ed. This was the goal. This is one of these things where we set a goal and we really delivered it. Let me make this quick point here about completion, dual enrollment, the power of 15. I'm speaking as a high school superintendent. I want you to know, for my higher ed folks, my college folks, I have no desire to be a college. I really don't. Why am I doing dual credit? And I have 8 post-secondary partners and delivering almost 11,000 dual credit enrollments. 86% of my 3,000 graduates a year are graduating with early college credit in hand. We have no disparities among our demographic groups enrolled in dual credit. Why am I doing it? I am doing it to help students achieve their self-efficacy, for the students to be able to transition into higher ed. And we know that if we get them to the 15 college credits and they've got math and English under their belt, they're twice as likely to graduate. They're twice as likely to stay on your campus, right? That's the power of 15. We're going to have to skip through all of this. These are some of the...
But if you just go back, Laz, that's fine. That's the easiest one. If you look at this is why dual credit. So those who leave high school without dual credit continue at about a 27% in the 15 cohort, but it goes all the way up to 46%. Nearly 50% persist and graduate at a much higher rate because they have been exposed to dual credit.
That alone should create supporters across all of our community college campuses, faculty. If we give them College Comp 101 on our campus and Math 101, and we also do often speech, if they have that, when they get to you, they're going to take English 102 and the next level of math, right? They're going to be there for the rest of that. We've just increased by twice their likelihood of persistence and completion. That means more students staying on your campus.
Yep.
We only have about a minute left, so I don't know that what we want to... So basically, these are the goals. Informed choice. And I think, are we at time, Edith? 11:20? We have 1 minute. I think we're good. So we'll end on this slide that we can do it. We've been doing this as a state. You should feel really good about being in Illinois. We've been working together. We are not in silos. We have worked together. We've put the infrastructure in place from a state policy framework to deliver on these results. And I think the sky's the limit.
Yeah, and I was going to say, and I just call out that dual credit slide too, that becomes consistent across all categories of student. The other thing is that when students graduate from community colleges and then transfer, the completion rate becomes much more consistent and aligned across all categories of student. So this idea around pushing students to complete, to hit those milestones becomes critically important in terms of leveling that playing field.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you all for being here.